I know you've said that you wanted this character to be both kick-ass and vulnerable, which is kind of a trick to get, tricky balance to get right. Was there a sort of moment where you felt, okay, this is who she is, this is where I am? I don't know if it was a tricky role to play.
Yeah, it was a bit tricky, but it's always at the end of the shoot where you feel like, oh, I've got it. I've got her now, and you wrapped, it's over. I feel like it always goes that way. It takes 4 or 5 months to really feel like you get your feet into the shoes of this person and actually are walking in their path, and then the work's over. It's a really kind of frustrating thing.
I know that Len and Colin and others have said that they've been sort of at pains to say this is not a remake of the 1980 Paul Verhoeven Arnie movie. This is an adaptation of that original 1966 short story by Philip K. Dick. Dreadful title. We can remember it for you wholesale. Was there I don't know whether you just said, okay, well, that's what I'm going to concentrate on, the short story and the script. I won't even look at that movie because it might kind of muddy the waters a bit.
We looked at the film, just to remember why we loved it and what was amazing about it, and just to be very clear about how different we wanted to, create this reimagining of it. But it's always worth looking at the original material. But you're right, we absolutely went to the short story, and I think specifically Len, our director, he went to the short story, and really took that kind of dark feeling that Philip Dick was always writing about of the post-apocalyptic future. That's kind of what we went for in this.
It's a reportedly $125 million movie, big explosions. There's a lot of beautiful Metropolis stroke Blade Runner imagery. But I know that you said yourself, you and Colin, before each scene, you really want to just get down to that sort of emotional truth of, these two characters are real. These two characters, even though the world itself may be sci-fi, the characters have to be real for people to care. Was that something that you sort of deliberately said from the start? Let's make sure that this is about the people rather than the spectacle.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's probably why I really wanted to be a part of it, because Len was so driven about that element as well. And I mean, we would spend hours, Len, Colin, and I, after work, before work, discussing how far we can take this relationship, how, delicate does my character have to be with him, because she has to be patient with the fact that he just doesn't know, he just doesn't remember, and it's so unbelievably frustrating. But how would you actually behave if this was a reality? It was really hard to walk that fine line of what could be real, obviously, because none of us have ever experienced anything like this. So we were just sort of projecting the ideas that we thought were the most relatable, and hopefully audiences would be able to grab on to these two people and want them to survive, want them to remember, and want them to be together in the end.
And I've spoken to you before, and one thing you've always said is that, it would have been very easy for you to just become a scream queen, just to run around in horror movies, running away from monsters, and you would have made a good living, and you would have been, would have been all good.
That's probably very true.
You've obviously mixed it up, and stuff like Easy Virtue and The Illusionist and all that are very much removed from that. I mean, is it easy enough, though, given that, like me, you're a damn fine-looking person? Does it get difficult sometimes knowing that within the Hollywood circle, of course, they're going to think of me for certain kinds of roles, in the same way that Samuel L. Jackson will play the big scary black man, you will play the beautiful girl for whatever reason the story might be there. But is that been, so far, I don't know if that's been a little bit kind of frustrating, or whether you realise, well, of course that's what they're going to see?
Well, I think it's tough for women in general in Hollywood. In our business, it's when you do something, the first thing you do that has some decent success, that's sort of the little spot you get put in. And then you spend the next 5 years pushing against these walls and then breaking out of it and trying something else. And then if that's successful, then that's the box you're in. And so you sort of spend the next few years pushing out of that box, and then you go to the next one. It's just sort of the way that it is, I think. So I feel like a lot of people experience this thing where whether you want to call it typecasting, or people just know that you can be successful, or you have an audience in that genre, whatever it may be. Not to say that it isn't frustrating, because it is. As an actor, you have an idea in your mind of a very diverse career, and you, at least for me, I grew up watching Meryl Streep and thinking, she can do anything. I want her career. How do I do that? Oh, I have to keep doing different things. And as you go along, you realize, wow, she must have had just as hard of a struggle as anyone else. And if you talk to her now, I feel like those women and actors as well, who you love and are at the top of their game, they still get nervous. They still freak out before they take a role. If they take a role, they feel like, oh, that was a mistake. I shouldn't do it. So those insecurities that I feel now, I think will continue. And it's it's just a very challenging industry to work in.
I know we've got very little time, but I spoke to you back in October 2003 in New York for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and beautiful Michael Bay was there, and that sense of, there was a sort of beginning and a sense of, thrill that you're in this world. But I don't know if 9 years later, given that, like all careers, you've had hits and misses, and you've had interesting movies and movies didn't quite work. I don't know whether that thrill is still there, whether it's a sort of, sometimes it feels like hard work, so sometimes you need to go snowboarding for a few hours just to get your head away from